They don't raise their voice. They don't throw things. They don't always walk away. But somehow, you feel it, the weight of their silence, the chill in their presence, the invisible wall. That wasn't there yesterday. This is how the avoidant punishes, not with open confrontation, but with absence, not with words, but with withdrawal. And the cruelest part? They often don't even admit that they're doing it. To you, it feels like abandonment. To them, it feels like survival. But underneath, it is a form of control, a punishment without language, a way of saying, you crossed the line, and now you'll feel the cost. The silent weapon. Avoidants rarely punish in ways that are obvious. They don't yell like the angry. They don't plead like the anxious. They don't even bargain like the fearful. Instead, they disappear, even while sitting right in front of you. This is the first form of punishment. Silence. Silence becomes their shield, their weapon, their fortress. They know that nothing hurts more than being unseen, unacknowledged, unworthy of response. So they give you exactly that. You ask a question, no reply. You send a message, read, but ignored. You share something vulnerable. They glance away, pretending it doesn't matter. And here's the paradox. They don't always do this because they hate you. Often, it's because they're afraid. The avoidant grew up learning that love was dangerous, that closeness suffocated, that being too available meant being controlled, shamed, or rejected. So when they feel hurt, they don't know how to express it. They don't know how to argue, or explain, or risk being vulnerable. Instead, they shut down. They disappear. They punish, not with fire, but with ice. The psychology behind this is brutal. For the avoidant, withdrawal equals safety. It gives them space to breathe again, to cool the intensity, to escape the feeling of being trapped. But for their partner, withdrawal equals torment because silence doesn't feel neutral. It feels like rejection, like a verdict, like being locked out of the one place you long to belong. That is why this unspoken punishment hurts more than words ever could. It tells you, without saying it, that you are undeserving of closeness, that your presence is too much, that your needs are a burden. And for someone who loves an avoidant, this silence is deafening. It can turn a room into a battlefield. It can make a simple dinner feel like exile. It can leave you questioning not just the relationship, but your own worth. But here's what makes it even more confusing. The avoidant doesn't always know. They're punishing you. In their mind, they're just taking space. They're cooling off. They're avoiding drama. But to the person who loves them, it feels like slow torture because silence doesn't just withhold sound. It withholds connection. It withholds safety. It withholds love. And when love is withheld, your nervous system panics. You chase harder. You explain more. You try to repair what you don't even understand. And the more you chase, the more they withdraw. The more you explain, the less they respond. The more you reach, the colder they become. This is how the punishment deepens, not through aggression, but through absence. Yet silence is only the beginning, because when the avoidant feels pushed, hurt, or exposed, they don't just withdraw their words. They withdraw their warmth, their presence, their care. They can still sit beside you, but you'll feel like you're oceans apart. That, too, is punishment without language. When affection turns cold, punishment isn't always silence. Sometimes it's presence without warmth. The avoidant can stay in the room. They can keep sitting beside you. They can still share the same bed. But something has shifted. The touch is gone. The softness is gone. The gestures of love, the ones you didn't even realize, meant so much. suddenly vanish. No goodnight kiss. No casual brush of the hand. No leaning in. When you talk, it is not absence of body. It is absence of soul. This withdrawal of affection is one of the avoidance sharpest punishments, because touch, connection, and intimacy are what bind us as humans. They are how we feel safe, how we feel chosen, how we feel loved. When those vanish, without explanation, your nervous system feels it immediately. It's not just sadness, it's panic. It's that deep, primal ache of, why don't they want me anymore? What did I do wrong? Why won't they look at me, hold me, touch me? It's a punishment that doesn't need words, because your body already knows. You're being shut out. Here's the painful truth. Avoidance grew up in environments where affection wasn't safe. Maybe love was inconsistent. Maybe comfort was withheld. Maybe touch came with conditions. So they learned early. Don't depend on closeness. Don't rely on tenderness. Don't show need. And now, as adults, when they feel hurt or cornered, they pull away in the most vulnerable place of all, the body, where others fight with words. They fight with distance. Where others slam doors, they simply stop reaching out. It feels invisible, but to the person who loves them, it is excruciating. Imagine lying in bed beside someone you love. You can hear their breath. You can feel the warmth of their skin, but they turn away. They don't move closer. They don't wrap an arm around you the way they used to. You try to shift closer. They stiffen, or worse, they don't move at all. That stillness, that refusal to meet your need, that is punishment. And it cuts deeper than 1,000 shouted arguments ever could. Because it doesn't just reject you, it rejects your longing to belong. The psychology of this is layered. For the avoidant, withdrawing affection feels like self-protection. They're thinking, if I don't give warmth, I can't be taken advantage of. If I don't show care, I can't be controlled. If I don't move closer, I can't be hurt. But for their partner, the withdrawal feels like exile. Because humans are wired for touch. We regulate through closeness. We calm through connection. We thrive when affection flows freely. So when that flow is cut off, your body feels starved. It panics. It grasps for reassurance. But the avoidant doesn't respond. And that silence of affection becomes the punishment itself. This is why many partners of avoidance say the same haunting line. It feels like I'm sleeping next to a stranger, because the body that once gave comfort now feels like a wall. The eyes that once softened now feel distant. The heart that once opened now feels locked. It's not always permanent, but in the moment, it feels like abandonment. And here's the cruel cycle. The more you try to break through, the colder they become. You ask, why are you being distant? They shrug. You reach out. They don't respond. You beg for connection. They retreat even further. The avoidant doesn't see this as punishment. They see it as space, as not making things worse, as avoiding the conflict. But for you, it feels like slow erasure, because intimacy is the glue. And when the glue is gone, you feel like the relationship is unraveling in your hands. This is why the avoidance unspoken punishment is so devastating. It isn't dramatic. It isn't explosive. It's subtle, quiet, almost invisible to outsiders. But inside the relationship, it feels like death by 1,000 cuts. Each withheld touch, each ignored attempt, each cold glance. Together, they send the same message. You don't deserve my closeness right now. And nothing wounds deeper than love withheld in the very place you long for it most. That is the second weapon, the withdrawal of affection. And it is one of the hardest to survive. The quiet sabotage. Not every punishment is silence. Not every punishment is coldness. Sometimes it looks like cooperation, but hidden inside is resistance. The avoidant doesn't always yell. They don't always leave. They don't always block you out completely. Instead, they sabotage quietly, slowly, carefully. And the cruel part? They do it in ways that are almost impossible to call out. Picture this. You suggest something simple. Let's plan a date night. They nod, smile faintly, but somehow the date never happens. You ask them to help with something important. They agree, but delay. You share your excitement about a future plan. They nod politely, but their actions never match their words. It's not an outright no. It's not confrontation. It's quiet sabotage. This form of punishment is one of the avoidance most confusing behaviors because it looks, on the surface, like they're still there. They didn't storm out. They didn't reject you outright. They didn't start a fight. But in the undercurrent, you feel the friction, the resistance, the refusal to fully participate. It's the way they withdraw their energy without ever saying it out loud. Why do they do this? Because direct confrontation feels terrifying. It risks vulnerability. It risks exposure. It risks a fight they don't think they can win. So instead, they withhold cooperation. They delay. They subtly resist. In their mind, it's safer. It gives them control. It allows them to punish without appearing cruel. But to the partner, it feels like betrayal. Imagine trying to build a life with someone who secretly resists every brick you place. You're carrying the weight. You're making the plans. You're holding the vision. But they keep quietly undoing, delaying, resisting, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to stall progress. It leaves you feeling heavy, exhausted, and worst of all, alone, even in partnership. This is why people in relationships with avoidance often say things like, I feel like I'm the only one trying. I feel like I'm dragging them along. I feel like I can never depend on them. It's not because the avoidant never cares. It's because their way of punishing is to stop showing up fully. They don't sabotage out of hate. They sabotage out of fear. Fear of closeness. Fear of expectation. Fear of being swallowed by someone else's needs. So when they feel hurt, cornered, or unsafe, they send a quiet message. You won't get all of me. Here's what makes this punishment so cruel. It doesn't just hurt you emotionally. It drains your life force. Because you keep pouring energy in. You keep planning. You keep hoping. You keep investing. And yet, they're quietly resisting every step. So you start to feel the imbalance. You start to feel the weight of carrying two people's effort. You start to wonder, am I the only one holding this together? And that doubt, that exhaustion, is exactly how their punishment lands. Some examples are subtle. They forget the plans you made. They accidentally show up late. They lose interest in the things you care about. They pull back just enough to make you question their commitment, but never enough that you can point and say, this is sabotage. And that's what makes it maddening, because you can feel it, you know it, but you can't prove it. It's denial-proof punishment, the kind that leaves you doubting yourself. The psychology behind this is rooted in control. As children, avoidants often felt powerless. Maybe a caregiver dominated them. Maybe love was conditional. Maybe their needs were ignored. So as adults, when they sense pressure in a relationship, they reclaim power through resistance. It's their way of saying, you don't control me. You can't make me. I will give you less, so I can feel safe. But from the outside, it looks like sabotage. It feels like punishment. Because instead of joining you in partnership, they quietly work against it. The result? You begin to carry the relationship alone. You do the planning. You keep things alive. You chase the closeness. You fix the problems. And little by little, you feel drained. You feel unseen. You feel like no matter how much you try, it's never enough. And that is the avoidance silent punishment. It makes you feel powerless, just as they once felt powerless. The cycle deepens here, because the more you push, the more they resist. The more you demand cooperation, the more they quietly sabotage. And eventually, you're left exhausted, confused, questioning your own worth. That is the quiet effectiveness of this punishment. It doesn't explode, it erodes, not all at once, but piece by piece, until you feel worn down, until you doubt yourself, until you wonder if maybe you're asking for too much. This is the third unspoken weapon: subtle sabotage, resistance dressed as cooperation. It is hard to see, harder to call out, and hardest of all, to survive without losing yourself in the process. The emotional eclipse. Some punishments you can see. You notice the silence. You notice the delay. You notice the sabotage. But this one is harder because it's not about what they do. It's about what they take away. The avoidant punishes by withdrawing their emotional presence. They don't leave the room. They don't walk away. They don't break up. They're still there, in the same space, in the same relationship. But emotionally, they've vanished. It's a kind of eclipse. You still see their body. You still hear their words. You still share the same bed. But their warmth is gone. Their laughter is gone. Their softness is gone. What remains is a shadow version of them, a distant silhouette. And for the partner who longs for closeness, this is one of the deepest punishments of all. Why does it hurt so much? Because love is not built on physical presence alone. It's built on emotional presence, on the ability to feel connected, to feel understood, to feel held. When the avoidant strips that away, it creates an emptiness that feels heavier than silence itself. It's the ache of being together, but feeling utterly alone. This punishment often begins subtly: a shift in tone, a sudden lack of interest, shorter replies, less eye contact. Then it deepens. They no longer ask questions. They no longer share their inner world. They no longer let you in. And soon, you realize you're speaking to a wall. Not an angry wall, not a shouting wall, a wall of indifference. The psychology here is powerful. For the avoidant, withdrawing emotional presence feels safe. It allows them to control the relationship. Without confrontation, it allows them to punish. Without words, it is their way of saying, "You hurt me. You pushed me. You crossed a line." But instead of naming it, they erase themselves. They leave you in the dark, forcing you to feel the void. Think of it like this: an anxious partner punishes by clinging, by demanding, by amplifying their presence. But the avoidant punishes by erasing, by removing, by disappearing emotionally, while staying physically, its absence masquerading as presence. And that's why it's so confusing, because you can't say they left. You can't say they're gone. They're right there. But you can feel the absence, and it eats at you. This form of punishment often triggers the deepest insecurities in their partner, because you begin to wonder, do they even love me? Am I imagining this distance? Why do I feel so unwanted when they're right here? And soon, you start chasing. You start questioning. You start working harder to win them back. But this only strengthens the punishment, because the avoidance sees your efforts, feels your neediness, and retreats further. The eclipse deepens. In many ways, this punishment mirrors what they once lived as children. Maybe as a child, they had a parent who was physically present, but emotionally absent. Someone who provided food, clothing, shelter, but not emotional safety. So now, as adults, They recreate the same dynamic. They repeat the absence because it's what they know. But this time, it's not a parent withholding love. It's them. And it's their partner who suffers the weight of that eclipse. Here's the cruel irony. The avoidant often doesn't realize just how deep this punishment cuts. To them, it feels like self-protection. It feels like taking space. It feels like the only way to stay safe. But to the partner, it feels like abandonment. It feels like rejection. It feels like being punished for wanting closeness. It's like being starved in the middle of a full fridge. The food is right there. The love is right there. But it's withheld. This emotional eclipse doesn't just affect love. It seeps into every area of the relationship. Conversations become shallow. Plans lose their excitement. Physical intimacy feels mechanical. The connection feels hollow. And the partner begins to feel invisible. Not because the avoidant is gone, but because they've stopped seeing, stopped listening, stopped caring, stopped opening. It is death by disconnection. Slow, quiet, and devastating. This punishment is also deeply confusing because of its unpredictability. Sometimes the avoidant reappears. They come back with warmth, with humor, with love. And in those moments, the partner feels relief, hope, a sense that maybe the eclipse is over. But just as quickly, the light disappears again, and the cycle repeats. Warmth, coldness, presence, absence. It keeps the partner trapped in a loop of hope and despair. And that is one of the most effective punishments of all. Why? Because it conditions the partner. They begin to associate love with unpredictability, with inconsistency, with longing. They learn to work harder, to self-abandon, to silence their needs, just to avoid another eclipse. And this is where the punishment becomes not just emotional, but psychological. It rewires the partner's expectations of love. It makes them settle for crumbs. It makes them cling to scraps of connection. And over time, it breaks their sense of worth. The tragedy is this: the avoidant doesn't punish out of malice. They punish out of fear. Fear of being engulfed. Fear of being controlled. Fear of being exposed. But in protecting themselves, they wound the person who loves them most. And the partner pays the price for a wound they didn't create. This is the fourth punishment. Not silence, not sabotage, not delay, but emotional eclipse, the erasure of warmth, the withdrawal of presence. It is absence hidden inside presence, and it cuts deeper than any word ever could. The push-pull trap, the deepest punishment the avoidant gives, is not silence, not sabotage, not even erasure. It's the push-pull cycle, the way they let you in, just enough to taste closeness, just enough to feel safe, just enough to believe this time is different. And then they pull away again. This isn't a one-time move. It's a pattern, a rhythm, a dance they don't even fully know they're doing. They open the door, then slam it shut. They pull you close, then push you away. They give affection, then retreat into coldness. And the cruelest part is this: the moments of closeness are real. They mean something. They're not fake, but they are fleeting. Because for the avoidant, closeness feels both beautiful and unbearable. The psychology of this is important. Avoidants punish by inconsistency. When they feel secure enough, they can allow intimacy. They can laugh with you, share with you, even melt in your arms. But the moment it becomes too much, their nervous system panics. Closeness feels like a trap, like danger, like suffocation. So they retreat, withdraw, turn cold, not because they stopped caring, but because caring too much feels like a threat to their survival. And here's where the punishment comes in. When they retreat, you feel punished for ever letting your guard down, because now you're left hanging, questioning, grasping for the closeness that just existed moments ago. You replay their laughter, their softness, the way they touched your hand, the way they whispered in your ear, and you wonder, what changed? What did I do wrong? Why are they gone again? It feels personal. It feels like rejection. It feels like betrayal. But for them, it feels like breathing. It feels like safety. The cycle looks like this. They draw you close, through tenderness, through vulnerability, through intimacy. Then they retreat, into silence, into distance, into coldness. You chase. They retreat further. You back off. They come close again. It's push. It's pull. It's a seesaw with no balance. And the partner becomes trapped in the rhythm. Believing closeness is always followed by loss. Why is this cycle the most devastating punishment? Because it trains you to doubt yourself. It conditions you to wait for the drop, to brace for the retreat. It makes you afraid to fully enjoy closeness, because you know it won't last. It keeps you on edge. It keeps you chasing. It keeps you working harder to earn consistency. That will never come. And soon, you begin to mistake inconsistency for passion. You begin to call it chemistry. You begin to believe the push, pull is proof of love. But really, it's punishment disguised as intimacy. Think of it like emotional gambling. Each moment of closeness is like a jackpot. You feel high. You feel alive. You feel chosen. Then it disappears, and you're left empty. So you chase the next hit, the next moment of affection, the next time they let you in. And just like a gambler at the slot machine, you lose more than you win. But the rare wins keep you hooked. This is how the avoidant keeps you bound. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but powerfully. For the avoidant, this cycle is not punishment in their mind. It feels like survival. It feels like the only way to balance their fear of closeness with their fear of abandonment. But for you, it is emotional whiplash. And whether they know it or not, this is the punishment. They never let you fully settle, never let you fully exhale, never let you fully believe you are safe. Because every time you step closer, you also brace for the retreat. This push pull cycle also damages trust. Because after a while, you stop believing their closeness. You stop trusting their warmth. You stop relaxing into their arms. Because you've learned the pattern. And deep down you know, the pull is coming. So even when they're close, you can't enjoy it. You can't feel secure in it. You're waiting for the punishment, waiting for the door to slam shut again. And that waiting becomes its own form of torment. The avoidant may not intend to punish, but intent doesn't erase impact. And the impact is this: the partner becomes trapped in a cycle of hope and despair, a cycle of closeness and loss, a cycle that feels like love, but starves like punishment. Here's the truth no one wants to face. Avoidants punish without words, because words would make them accountable. If they said, "I feel suffocated," you could respond. If they said, "I need space," you could respect it. If they said, "I'm scared of closeness," you could meet them with compassion. But they don't say it. Instead, they push and pull. They punish through absence, through unpredictability, through inconsistency, because it keeps them safe, while leaving you in confusion. So what happens to the partner? They shrink. They silence themselves. They stop asking for what they need. They start tolerating less and less. Because each time they push for more, they get punished with withdrawal. And soon, they learn that the only way to keep the avoidant close is to never ask for closeness at all. That's the deepest punishment of this cycle. Not just what the avoidant does, but what it trains you to stop doing. It trains you to betray yourself. This is why the push pull is the final, most powerful punishment. It doesn't just silence you, it reshapes you. It teaches you to accept crumbs. It makes you doubt your worth. It convinces you love is conditional. And worst of all, it makes you believe the cycle is your fault. That if only you were calmer, if only you were less needy, if only you were easier to love, then maybe, just maybe, they'd stop pulling away. But the truth is, the cycle isn't about you. It's about their fear, their wiring, their wound. And no matter how much you adjust, you can't stop a pattern that isn't yours. So let's put it clearly. The avoidant punishes without saying a word, through silence, through delay, through sabotage, through emotional eclipse, and finally, through the push-pull cycle, the punishment of inconsistency, the punishment of closeness followed by distance, the punishment of love that can never fully land. But here's the secret they can't hide. Avoidants punish not because they don't care, but because they care more than they can handle. And the closer you get to their heart, the more dangerous it feels to them. That's why the punishments exist, not as cruelty, but as protection. The tragedy is this. In protecting themselves, they wound the very person who only wanted to love them. And so, you're left with a choice. Not to fix them, not to chase them, not to punish them back, but to ask yourself, can I live inside this cycle? Can I keep paying the price for their fear? Can I keep accepting punishment as love? Or do I deserve a love that doesn't punish me for wanting closeness? Because at the end of the day, love is not about silence, not about absence, not about push and pull. Real love is steady. Real love is safe. Real love does not punish. And maybe, just maybe, that's the love you were always meant for.